Good morning, everyone. I'm not finished yet. I recently, just a few minutes ago, made a video about how I store pens, and I'm hand holding my camera, and the pen that I could use was a desk pen that was near to me, and it was this Schaefer desk pen from the 60s that I ended up grabbing. And it got me to think of both the famous Pure Gustafson test. It's blobbing now because I just dipped the whole thing in water rather than filling it in the water. The ink that was on the nib is what you see, diluted a little bit. Anyway, it got me to think about fine nibbed pens, extra fine nib, and also the Pure Gustafson test, which is now world famous, or at least internationally famous. And there's occasion where I am asked to do a drawing, which is very, very detailed. And it has very, very tiny little scratchy lines in it, as well as maybe in the same drawing, as well as maybe a really big bold line. Oops. The problem of writing on a desk that has a tilt to it is that gravity is more obvious. Let's say I had to do a drawing that sort of has thick lines and thin lines in it at the same time, or a certain kind of calligraphy or something portrait that I'm drawing. I can do that by drawing it larger and scanning it in and reducing it and sending it off to the client, or I can draw it smaller with a very, very fine nibbed pen. And these are the choices that I make when I decide if I want to do a drawing. How large is it going to be, so I know how large it will be printed, reproduced, so I know how I can draw it. It's a complicated formula, or maybe it's not that complicated when I make it sound complicated. When I'm describing it to other people, and I see their eyes glaze over like they don't know what I'm talking about, I guess it is complicated, but it all has to do with how I draw it. Here's the drawing face, and how or where and what size it's going to be reproduced at. Certain engraving can be very fine. Look at your $20 bill. Or if it's going to be silk screened, it has to be one way. If it's going to be embroidered on the pocket of your shirt, it has to be another degree of line weight. And so to draw something, I quite often have to draw very, very, very fine lines. Let's see if I can show you. And to make the finest line, if I were to draw carefully a fine line, this is sort of as fine as I can get it with this pen. I can flip it over, and I can maybe get a finer line still. But to get the finest line and to get them sort of the closest together, this is where the Pure Gustafson test is important, is I have to draw fast. And somehow I'm able to keep these things relatively parallel and moved incrementally over evenly, so they're more or less the same distance apart. Now I do that because I've had 63 years on this planet where I've done things like this, so I've practiced to be able to get this. This is not filled with ink, it's just dipped in dirty water. So drawing fast to get a fine line is really what I require in a pen. If it's going to skip, it's no good to me. And sometimes if a pen skips, it's a mistake in design. So the Pure Gustafson test of scribbling really, really fast is to make sure that it's not going to skip halfway through the line. So the Pure Gustafson test is quite often to do two things. One, to see if it skips, and two, to see how fine a line you can make it. Because when I draw slowly, regardless of really how lightly I touch the paper, there's more ink that goes onto the paper than it does here when I go fast. So drawing fast or writing fast it's like the ink is delivered at the same rate regardless of whether you're going slow or going, the same rate over time. And if that molecule of ink is spread out over a longer distance, it'll be finer by the laws of mathematics. So this is what I'd like you to do if you're interested. Get a ruler and mark an area that's 1 inch wide, and get your finest pen and draw as many lines as you can. It's hard for me to do this and hold the paper at the same time, hold the camera at the same time. Draw as many lines as you can between the one mark and the other with your finest pen, and then count how many lines you made. My finest pen, I think, came up with 150 lines. So there was a line, looking through a microscope, there was a line, and there was a space, and then there was another line. Now the space between the lines might have been narrower than the lines themselves, but there was a distinct difference. It was not filled in, and they were relatively parallel. I mean, there could have been a little tiny bit of overlap here or there, but it was generally pure in that way. And the pen that got that award is this pen here. It's a Schaefer Triumph Nib pen, Jean Green, for emeritus service to the Red Cross. And it has an excruciatingly fine, stiff nib in it. And my friend Ted Clausen, who is a calligrapher, artist friend of mine, his reaction to this pen, I'll have to find the link and link it to this, but it's just, his reaction was priceless, and I have it on camera, and it's on one of my YouTube things. It was amazement and horror. It was more horror than amazement at the fact that the pen could do that. And he described it as saying it was like a scalpel, and the word it wrote, because of its fineness, cut the definition of the word in two. The meaning of the word was cut in two because it was written with this pen. He has a very brilliant way of applying human attributes to the pen nib, and how the pen nib mainly, but the balance of the pen, everything works. And he's just, his insight is amazing. I'm looking forward to taking more videos with him soon, because he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and creative and everything else. So try this test at home. I'd like to find out how try doing it carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can probably get X numbers this way. If I flip it over and use the finer side, I can maybe get 2X that way. If I go fast, I'll probably get 4x the number using a pen if I go with speed. And it's tough. If you don't write that way, you don't draw that way, you're not gonna feel it. You're not gonna be able to capture that. But when I draw, especially when I crosshatch, the last thing I want to do is spend 5 hours crosshatching blue sky, or what represents sky. The clouds are going to be left white, but the rest of the sky, the blue sky, is going to be blue, represented by crosshatching of some sort. And I could 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So crosshatching, for me to be able to do it well, I have to do it quickly. And you hear the thump, thump, thumps as they're driving another thing into the ground over there. So try this test at home. Bye.